What's up, everybody? And welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button and let me know what you think of today's discussion in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet. We're living on a ROC and seeing this video for the first time. I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another Sit Down video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get in to another very interesting organized crime topic. And the most recognizable mobster in the history of America is John Gotti. John Gotti was polarizing, flashy, and influential. His name still, though, rings bells in every criminal aspect there is. You could see his influence in various criminal groups like cartels and other mobs. Today in America, though, the mafia looks a lot different. And what if I told you it wasn't Italians, it wasn't Russians, it was black organized crime? The tenors of John Gotti and American Cosa Nostra are still felt today in cities around America. One of them is Philadelphia. Let's just be honest, Philadelphia has a major problem with criminals on the street today. Today, we're going to talk about one of them, a man who could be referred to as the Black John Gotti. The story of Rakim Fat Rock Savage. Next on the Sit Down. Before we get in to Rakim Savage and his racketeering enterprises, I want to first discuss the one problem that all organized criminals have had for decades. It is the RICO Act, the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, something that the government used to prosecute people like the ones seen here. Today, it is still used, and it is being used at a high level. Rakim Savage was born on May 19th, 1998 in Philadelphia. Now, before we get in to the various indictments that are against Mr. Savage, I think it's first important to understand the city of Philadelphia and how truly gang-ridden it is. It's not necessarily the Bloods and the Crips, but it's dozens of corner-like gangs that control street corners. One corner could be one group. You go 2 blocks over, and it's controlled by another group, and they are rivals. Now, some of the biggest street gangs or sets in Philadelphia are groups like the Young Bag Chasers, Big Natty Gang, and groups like Zoo Gang. Now, to make it more understandable for people that don't understand this grouping or this culture, Zoo Gang is one of the biggest gangs in North Philadelphia. And essentially think of them as the Gambino crime family, okay? They cover North Philadelphia. The Gambino crime family, though, around certain neighborhoods have captains that run them. These other smaller gangs are essentially captains, and they do the bidding for the bigger overarching crime family. Zoo Gang is one of the biggest gangs in the city, and they are cool with several other sets, and we're going to talk about those today. Mr. Savage, Rakim Savage, first got into crime in 2017. He would be arrested by Philadelphia police for fleeing and eluding, and he would get probation. Several months later, towards the end of 2017, Mr. Savage was hit with possession with intent to deliver narcotics. He also received no jail time and was placed on probation. Now, in Philadelphia, Mr. Savage was running with Zoo Gang, and Zoo Gang basically operate out of Strawberry Mansion and other parts of Philadelphia. Now, specifically, Mr. Savage had a faction, a group called Omerta Gang. And we're going to talk first about one indictment that involves various members and associates of Omerta Gang. Omerta Gang operates out of Strawberry Mansion, specifically 25th to 30th Street between Lehigh Avenue and Allegheny Avenue. Now, again, they're part of a bigger set known as Zoo Gang, which operate around 25th and Master, as well as Thompson, as well as have various factions around North Philadelphia. Now, as we know, Omerta is taken from the Southern Italy Code of Silence that all mob groups operate under, which essentially covers the Code of Silence. Now, Zoo Gang also had merchandise where Omerta Gang had clothing that said Omerta on it. They also used this sign to signal the O, Omerta. Now, I want to talk about the first indictment that involves Mr. Savage. Now, I call him the Black John Gotti because by the end of this video, you'll see really that Mr. Savage operated like a mob boss. He had earners, he had shooters. They were equal opportunity criminals. Now, the first indictment, both of these indictments encapsulate about a 5 to 6 year period from about 2018 all the way till 2024-ish. And Mr. Savage aided and abetted. You can see a clear and concise portrait that Mr. Savage was thought of as a leader due to his connections to being a prominent member of Zoo Gang and thus the leader of Omerta. The first indictment would drop in July of 2024. And I did talk about this indictment in depth here involving a person called Kill Bill. I discussed that indictment in depth, but I also want to discuss Mr. Savage's role in this indictment. Now, this indictment mostly encapsulates violent crime at the federal level, and this would discuss the shooter part that Mr. Savage essentially offered support to and instructed to. Now, one of the things we find out right away about Mr. Savage in this indictment is that he is directly involved with transferring illegal guns used in the commission of violent crimes. Now, two of the names also in this indictment are two very prominent figures, one of which on the left is a man called Jalil Williams, a.k.a. 25th Street Bill and Kill Bill. Now, Mr. Williams is a rapper and can be seen in various music videos discussing his exploits. On the right, another person named in this indictment, a man called Hanif Robertson, a.k.a. Black Neef. Now, these two were directly involved in murder in aid of racketeering. Now, I will get to that in a second. Also included in this indictment was various PUA benefit fraud, including Mr. Savage making approximately $40,000 in phony unemployment claims, claiming he had a job when he didn't. Now, the most serious behavior of Mr. Savage that we found in this indictment, in this first indictment, reflects his willingness to aid and abet and oversee violent crime. And one thing that we can find that made him very smart is he didn't actually participate in the violent crime. He operated as the man on the top, instructing and aiding the commissions of these violent crimes. So he's smart enough not to get his hands dirty, right? He doesn't go out and actually pull it. He instructs people to pull it, and then they do it. I want to talk about some of the truly vicious things these individuals did, including Mr. Williams and Mr. Robertson. Though before that, I want to also make it clear that Mr. Savage completely separated his earners and his shooters. Now, in one text message exchanged on January 2nd, 2020, Rakeem Savage in a group chat expressed dismay over Omerta members more concerned with, quote, making money and not on revenge and avenging fallen or wounded members. So basically, he's saying to his people that, are involved in violent crime, we need to go out and start avenging people. We need to stop worrying about making money. These guys were starting to do counterfeiting, PUA fraud, and he's saying, we need to get out and do what we got to do for our people. That's where these two would come in. Now, in this indictment where we see violent crime start to pop up, that's in late 2021. Omerta members Jalil Williams and Hanif Robertson are allegedly involved in two hits, one of which they do themselves, which I'll talk about. The other one involves the shooting of a woman called Chandra Jones. Now, Miss Jones was killed in a case of mistaken identity in late 2021. She was shot by 4 members of a group called BNG, aka Big Natty Gang. Now, from what we found in the indictment, Mr. Williams allegedly set this up and ordered these guys, who are part of a different gang in Strawberry Mansion, to do some dirty work. Now, at one point, Mr. Savage displayed his issues with using these people to help them out. At one point on April 4th, 2022, Jalil Williams exchanged messages on Instagram with defendant Rakeem Savage. Williams would mention on Instagram and named himself as being involved in the Chandra Jones murder, as well as a murder of a person called Samir Jefferson. Defendant Savage stated, quote, the juveniles that Mr. Williams hired to kill CJ are now involved in further Omerta activities and been, quote, difficult. Jalil Williams responds stating, quote, he would get the drop on them, meaning Mr. Williams would instruct where they could find members of the Big Natty Gang and hopefully get rid of them. So they were becoming problematic, and Mr. Savage and Mr. Williams discussed this in text messages. Now, another murder that Mr. Williams and Mr. Roberson participated in collectively and did was the murder of 14-year-old Samir Jefferson. Now, Samir Jefferson was shot 18 times days after Chandra Jones in the area of Feltonville in Philadelphia. Now, you might be thinking 18 times. Why so much? According to what we know, he was shot that many times to send a message. Now, I do want to make it clear, Mr. Jefferson was painted as a youth, which he was. That said, it had been discussed that Mr. Jefferson knowingly and willingly spoke publicly about the death of a friend of Jalil Williams, and Jalil Williams took it as he needed to go because of it. No person deserves to be shot and killed 18 times. These people were incredibly violent. Now, after this run of murders, including the hit on Samir Jefferson, Mr. Roberson and Mr. Williams go underground, if you will. They go on the run because they are wanted in connection with this. From what we know, Mr. Savage willingly aided and abetted Mr. Williams and hid him in a safe house on North Bancroft Street in Philadelphia. They then went on the run due to the fact that people were closing in, and the Philadelphia Police Department, as well as the feds, knew exactly where this safe house was. Eventually, down the road, Mr. Roberson would be arrested in Georgia, as well as Mr. Williams, seen here, arrested also in Georgia. Now, it didn't stop there, involving the aiding and abetting that Mr. Savage was doing while these guys were in jail. Mr. Savage also willingly provided them with contraband as well as money behind the wall in aiding them in staying up to date with what was going on. Here, Jalil Williams can be seen with multiple contraband cell phones in his prison cell in Philadelphia. Now, at one point, seen here, I mentioned, as I talked about, they talk willingly about the fact that Williams was involved in these hits and people need to fix what's going on out on the streets. Also, at one point, you can see the innate ability of Mr. Savage to make it clear he is above Mr. Williams, stating in a text message, quote, in terms of hiring the Big Natty Gang kids to do a hit, he would say, quote, you made a mistake. Wish you listened more. Again, Mr. Savage up top, instructing people, teaching people, aiding and abetting people. It's clear he was at the top of the totem pole. He was the man at the top of the volcano, as they say. This indictment was quite problematic because, again, we also look at the fact that we'll get into another part of the indictment where we find out where Mr. Savage is making all the money, which allow him to do things like this, which is posted on his public Instagram, as well as things like this. Where is the money coming from? We also found betting receipts. A $10,000 two-team parlay placed on July 2nd, 2023 at a betting terminal at Rivers Casino in Philadelphia. Here, Mr. Savage, which he put on his Instagram, this parlay, $10,000 to win approximately $17,000. I will point out this parlay did hit. Where is this money coming from? Well, I'm about to tell you. Another indictment would drop in late 2024. This was down the road, superseded. And this right here is one of the most fascinating indictments I have ever read. And what we find is there are so many parallels between these individuals and these individuals portrayed in Goodfellas. We see over the years involving mobsters that the most popular, successful mobsters of all time, men that became bosses, started in hijacking. And you wouldn't believe it's still going on today. And you are not going to believe some of the things Mr. Savage and his co-conspirators were doing in this indictment. And this indictment obviously states Mr. Savage at the top. Also involved is a man called Ronald Byrd and a person called Douglas Mathis. Now, the group that was doing all the hijacking, they were involved in the Hobbs Act robberies, the interstate commerce, that kind of thing, was a group called Dirty Block. Now, this is a group, a small group that operates in the area of 13th and Cambria, 13 Somerset, 13 and William, basically between Glenwood Avenue and Lehigh Avenue in North Philadelphia. This is a separate faction of a Zoo Gang. They're all very close, these guys. Now, some of the people in Dirty Block at one point were part of a group called GND that operated at Gratz and Dolphin Streets in North Philadelphia. Again, bordering 20th Street, Zoo Gang territory. So all these guys kind of worked in unison. Several members of this conspiracy said here out of the Eastern District of New York, public information. Some of those people include Akeem Hawk Palmer, as well as a person called Sakeem Dixon. Now, Mr. Palmer, who lived on William Street in North Philadelphia, had two brothers also involved in this conspiracy. Let's get into this indictment because it is absolutely fascinating. Now, what it essentially involves is truck hijacking. What these individuals would do is they would sit on trucks, research trucks at truck stops, wait for the driver to leave or go to sleep, and they would steal what was in the truckloads. At one point, only one of these situations did a driver intervene, and they took the driver essentially hostage, putting him under the truck, and did what they had to do. But for most of these robberies, they didn't have to use any weapons. They just took what they had, and they would use a Dodge Ram truck. At one point, they used a 2008 Hino box truck that they acquired. This was really well thought out. Now, I'm going to go into several thefts that these individuals do. They start in January of 2023. Now, the first robbery they do is that of 36 75-inch LG televisions they steal from a lot in Philadelphia. One of the defendants in this case, after the robbery, Douglas Mathis, stated in a text message to other co-defendants, quote, "Who needs some big-ass TVs?" Now, several weeks later, the group would steal 49 cases of hypnotic liquor from a load in Philadelphia. They would then attempt to sell it on the black market. Now, the conspiracy would continue several days later, where the group would steal approximately 10,000 pounds of frozen turkey wings. Several days later, they would steal 11 pallets of frozen beef from a lot in South Philadelphia. So understand, this is not, a couple of bags of stuff. These are pallets. These are, dozens of cases of liquor. And they were stealing everything. It was liquor, beef, food, TVs, appliances, commercial refrigerators. Now, Rakeem Savage was directly involved in these. At one point, two co-defendants would trade text messages with pictures of the pallets. At one point, Savage and his co-defendants would steal 60 cases of Jose Cuervo tequila. Raheem Savage would then text his location where the tequila was to other co-defendants. Now, at one point in this whole conspiracy, one defendant, a person called Hanif Palmer, would text the group stating, quote, "From TVs, appliances, liquor, and food, we split it all." And that would state a conspiracy. Whatever they stole, it was all divvied out to everybody. At one point, the crew would then steal approximately 12 pallets of frozen snow crab legs. Then they would subsequently steal 1,150 boxes of frozen crab. One of the people in this case that was involved in the stealing of crab legs, Joaquin Palmer, would state in a text message photos of the stolen crab legs in the back of a truck body. So again, setting this all up, when the feds come to you, understand they already have the goods. The case has already been made and everything is looked at. The difference between these individuals is no different than the ones of yesteryear involving guys like John Gotti and Joe Massino. The only difference is today, telephones have ruined crime. And this is how they get caught. Boasting. You got to move your stolen merchandise. We got to let you know where it is. And the crazy thing is, all of this is in the indictment. I want to point out, this is the indictment. That is the frozen crab legs that they sent in photos. Now, in the conspiracy, they would also discuss in text messages what happened during the thefts. For instance, at one point, Raheem Savage would state, "Bro, I was on the truck, hawking them right there." A nickname, Hawk, defendant Joaquin Palmer. He would then say, and they would argue that the group would argue about prices, splitting proceeds, and how to sell the crab legs. It was all very simple. It was all very simple for the federal government to figure this out. And this is how Raheem Savage and all of these defendants were able to make a whole lot of money. And I want to make this clear. I have seen direct Instagram, and I'm not going to post it here, of these individuals betting tens of thousands of dollars in dice games, in casino betting slips. It's all here. This is all public information. Now, again, all of the people in this indictment are innocent until proven guilty. That said, this is a damning case. Throw in the fact that Mrs. Savage is also named in another case, which we talked about above, aiding and abetting. And those are violent crimes, murder and aid of racketeering. Let's get to the most high-level crime these individuals would do, and this would make national news. According to what we know, the biggest score that this group made would occur in April 2023 when Savage, as well as various others in this conspiracy, would knock off a treasury truck of $234,474.80 worth of dimes. Yes, you heard that correct. These individuals got the drop on a treasury truck that was left unattended in a parking lot in Philadelphia, bound for Florida. And it contained millions of dimes. They pull a truck up and just start taking approximately $234,000 worth of dimes. That's over 1 million dimes. That's a lot of dimes. That said, this was proven by defendant Douglas Mathis sending this photo to his co-defendants where one of the co-conspirators is seen laying on a mountain of dimes in the back of a truck bed. Now, Raheem Savage would then follow that up, sending a picture of a national news story covering the dime thefts, where he can state in a text message, quote, "Look, we made it." Now, this gets even more wild. Obviously, you have $234,000 in change of dimes. You'd offload those dimes. And this is where the ignorance comes with these individuals. They then instruct persons named to the indictment. They're not identified in the indictment, but they're named and the federal government know who they were. Those individuals are instructed to go up and down the mid-Atlantic seaboard, including Maryland, and exchange bulk dimes in Coinstar machines. At one point as well, one of the individuals in this case is seen walking into a bank, a credit union in Philadelphia, with tubs of dimes. He then puts them into his bank account and almost right after withdraws all the money. So he'd put, let's say, $1,500 into his bank account of dimes. He would then exchange and take $1,500 in cash out. I mean, all of this is on the indictment. This is very simple, and these thefts would continue well into late 2023. And all of this constitutes very simple things to understand. Hobbs Act robberies. Now, what is a Hobbs Act robbery? What is it defined as? Now, the Hobbs Act defines robbery as the unlawful taking of property from another person by force, violence, intimidation, or fear. Now, elements of a Hobbs Act robbery include the taking of property from another person against the victim's will by force, violence, or fear. And again, remember, the maximum sentence for one Hobbs Act robbery is 20 years in prison. Now, also in this indictment, charges include theft from interstate shipments, conspiracy, robbery which interferes with interstate commerce, theft of government money, possession of items from interstate shipment thefts, as well as aiding and abetting. Now, at one point, the evidence was strengthened due to the fact that Mr. Savage had elements of his robberies in his home, including various cases of liquor. Notice again, this is a direct screenshot from the indictment, which shows the frozen crab. And again, text message exchange about it. Also, when you have a bunch of dimes and you just go into credit unions to take those dimes and put them in your bank account, plus photos like this, obviously, this is not a normal occurrence. Most people don't have the ability to take a photo of themselves laying in a truck bed of dimes, especially when there had just been a huge dime seizure and robbery that was national news. All the individuals in this case are innocent, and in both cases, innocent until proven guilty, and they all sit at the Federal Detention Center in Philadelphia awaiting either a plea or trial. My guess is none of these individuals will go to trial. And this is how, again, the federal government succeed in prosecuting so many people. The evidence against people is so strong. They're going to go to people like Joaquin Savage, and they're going to say, look, man, we have you here. If you go and try to take us to court, if you try to fight this, there ain't no numbers coming to you. It's a word, and it's real simple. LIFE. So here's what we'll do. Plead. We'll give you 40 years, 30 years, and you'll get out at some point. You'll be an old man, but you get out. Now, some of the people in this indictment and in the other indictment, people like this, it's likely that Mr. Williams and Mr. Roberson never see the light of day again. They will die in federal prison due to the fact that they are directly involved with the murder of a 14-year-old child. Throw in the fact that the other people mentioned from separate cases, like the Big Natty Gang members, they also will never see the light of day again due to the fact that they killed a woman in cold blood. That said, most of the people in the second indictment we talked about, the one that involved the theft of interstate commerce, a lot of them will not get death sentences or life in prison. They're not going to get death sentences, but I mean life in prison in terms of they will die in prison. Several of the people, though, in this indictment are career criminals, including Hawk, a.k.a. Akeem Palmer. And his sentencing guidelines essentially are 200 months or more. So, again, it's a long time. A lot of these guys will be old men until they get out of federal prison. The one thing we can see, though, with people like this is Is a couple years of balling worth 20 or 30 years in the feds? Maybe more. To them, maybe it is. That said, there is a major difference between the gangsters of yesteryear and today. Most of the things they're doing are very similar: murder, racketeering, robberies, hijacking. The major difference, though, is the thing in the hands of this person: a telephone. Everything done on a telephone can be tracked, and all of it is used as evidence against you. Throw in the fact that these people made it a little bit more easy due to the fact that most of the things they were doing are discussed in rap songs that the government use against them. Remember, John Gotti, Joe Massino, and Jimmy Burke all started truck hijacking, just like all these people did. In fact, one of the largest heists in the history of America was done by hijackers, and it was immortalized in one of the greatest films of all time, Goodfellas. There's very little difference between Mr. Savage and Mr. Gotti. The major difference is culturally and a telephone. In the end, that will be the downfall. And we learned that in all of these stories. I hope you enjoyed this video. A little bit different show today, but as you can see, the passion I have for this topic is palpable. I love talking about these type of indictments. Very interesting people, very interesting criminals. We're not glorifying these people. We don't glorify any of the people on this channel. We are equal opportunity crime reporters. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, whatever. We talk about organized crime in this channel and on this channel, and this is absolutely the new age mafia here in America. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next week here on The Sit Down.